And if you guys lose this or anything, I've got it on our cloud. So at all points in time, I'll have the as-built drawing. So give you a little update on how it went. It was a lot more work than expected. Going through, we found, so back up a little bit of what was expected of us. Going through previously and changing all the small light bulbs, we noticed a lot of issues with roofers coming in, destroying pipe runs, not really respecting what was done the first time. You can't see it from the road, but when you're up there doing that, we noted a bunch of those. So that's where this started, some of those repairs, getting the system kind of back up to where it should be. There were transformers that we didn't know if they were out or not, timers that had some issues. So we really didn't know what it was until we'd go through and troubleshoot the entire system. So in this drawing, and it's difficult for me to you guys can take a look at these sets. But as it goes, it's one page shows the area of work, and then it breaks it down building by building. So what we were able to do is take Google Images, split downtown into 3 sections, north, center, south, and then turn those into CAD drawings. And then on those CAD drawings now you have exact locations of all of your panels. So when we started this project, we didn't know how these things were controlled, where they were powered from, what panels there were, and what fed them, what meters fed them. Now you have all that information. So you have locations of every single panel, you have locations of the timers, what the timers control, details, and the details include pictures of every one of these locations, meter numbers, so if there is an issue from the utility, you have a meter number that corresponds with that panel. So you're able to reference from sheet to sheet. So on the sheet that breaks it down into 3 sections, north, center, south, you'll find, like if you have a section out near the old theater, let's say, you'll know that that's fed from panel number 5, and you go back and now we have engraved labels on all the panels. So you'll be able to walk directly up to the panel, it'll say panel number 5. In here you've got panel schedules of all your panels and what they feed. Most of them feed just these lights. They were put in specifically, they're a public panel, they only feed these lights. Some of them do have circuit breakers that we do not know what they go off to feed, which is somewhat interesting because you pay the bills. You know, someone's paying these bills. I can't imagine they go to anything else, but 1 or 2 of them have 1 or 2 circuit breakers that are in there, I'm assuming added by the city electrician at some point in time for some use. But that's what these plans go through. They get down to it. Again, you can reference all of these sheets. I can teach you how to reference details and what the details say, but it'll point to a certain area and it'll reference a different sheet, sheet E 2.3, detail number 5. You can go to detail number 5. It will show the panel. So in the future, the real goal is, in the future, someone wants to fix this, you've got a problem, you know exactly where to go, and you can circle it and say, that's not working, go fix it. They now don't have to go behind the buildings to figure out where the panel is and what's going on. They know where it's fed from, they know the transformer that feeds it, and where those transformers are located. So then we went on all the rooftops, there's pictures of all those transformers as well. So all those transformers are now labeled on the details, and now you know where those are. Will save a considerable amount of troubleshooting time if and when you have problems with that. Then we went into fixing some of the issues. You would have, even like some of the timers that are next to it, either someone standing on or just purposely trying to break them, where the conduits are all bent. So we tore that out, we would replace those the sections of conduits. Roofing crews would come through and just demolish the wiring where it was laying on the top of the roof with live electrical wires hanging out of it. We repaired all of those. Found, I believe, 1 transformer and 1 time clock. That was bad, so we replaced the time clock. Well, last week, before we were going, I said, I'm gonna go 1 more time. So I took my kids were going out for ice cream. I said, I'm gonna drive it up and downtown a couple of times and seeing if there's anything out. Well, Collins Bar, above Collins Bar, and the building to the south was out, and then Idle Hours was out. All right, well, before I meet with you guys, I wanted to figure out why would this possibly be? They were just working. There was a timer that was off in hours, so you'll lose, so some of the problems you may have is just that you lose power for some reason in the back. let's say someone's doing a project, or they turn it off. And when you lose power, you'll lose some timing cycles. So if you're wondering why some of those will be on and off in different times, you'd lose some of those timing cycles. And then on top of Collins bar, we found that the two switches that controlled the transformers and on idle hour, someone had climbed up there and turned those off. Why? Not a clue. But you will battle that a little bit. There are different ways around that. There's different covers that could be installed that are lockable. Those are different, like I say, options. But because you have you have 15 panels that control the entire downtown. That's 15 different opportunities for people to mess with them a little bit. So you will battle that a little bit. Right now, the timing cycles are fairly close. They're not all controlled by one timer, which would be obviously ideal. The timer goes off, the whole place goes on. So you will see it over a sequence of, let's say, 15, 20 minutes, half hour, that you'll see them all go on as that timer gets to the dusk part of the night. And then they all are programmed to shut off, and that's all on your details on your cover sheet as well. Getting down to, and I apologize, I just want to grab something real quick. Excuse me. There were a couple of areas above the building just to the south of Grasshopper and above Brazen Head that the one above Brazen Head seems like someone's throwing something up and breaking them. Once they break some of these things, they become brittle. The sockets become brittle, and you can't just, it's not like a light fixture that you can just take the socket out and put the new socket back in. So you are having some issues where we disconnected the runs of the lighting and tested all the electrical components, and all of the electrical components up to that point are okay. It's something within that track. So these tracks run and there's wiring inside of them, but the components aren't necessarily replaceable very easily. You'd be replacing sections. So that may be something you want to look into as far as what does the future look like. Do you want to take sections that start going bad and going LED? There's not really a good replacement LED that you can just put in there. You know, when you see little bulbs out here and there, they may be just the sockets are bad, but they haven't, they're not blowing the fuses in the transformers yet. Whereas by Brazen Head, I apologize, I don't know the business that's down there, it was near the Grasshopper. They're blowing the fuses in the transformers. So there's something shorting out inside of those runs.
How long are those tracks?
Those tracks, the ones that are out, Brazen Head's not terribly long. I would say that's 20 feet, maybe. Each one's about 20 to 25 feet.
Are those still available? We just wanted to have some of those.
They are, obviously, the smaller sections are gonna be a little bit more expensive than buying, 1,000 feet. I guess I would probably recommend looking into that. If you start going LED, the best case scenario is to do it all at once so that you have a starting point. And when you go LED and you're doing it over a 10-year period, well, by the time you finish, the ones that you just started with are 10 years old. And you're gonna have, some of those diodes are gonna start going on as well. That's obviously a very expensive proposition as well. I think we've talked about that years ago. LEDs are gonna come down in price over time, like everything. But those are options for those.
So that track is available on today's world. So.
It is. The one by Brazen Head, looking at that, it would be nice to go LED because there's nothing to throw at and break. And I don't know if that's the case or not. It just seems odd. You can see there's damage to it and the amount that are out comparatively to what we just replaced. It doesn't make sense unless someone's throwing something up there. So that's.
Excuse me, if you replace those with LEDs, how much of the rest of that system is usable? You don't have to replace, excuse me, the runs or the boxes or the timers?
Correct. So the timers would stay, the transformers, so what it is you've got a panel and a timer that take 120 volts up to the corner of a rooftop. In the corner of that rooftop, there's a transformer that takes that from 120 volts down to 24 volts. That then feeds those tracks. So all those little bulbs are little 24 volt bulbs. You'd end up taking the transformer out and putting an LED driver in right at that point, and that would then feed the run. So you could do it piecemeal, transformer by transformer. Some of these runs, you've got 15 panels and 15 time clocks, but some of them have 6 transformers on them. One circuit is feeding very large sections of building lights, which have multiple transformers. So every transformer would get a, so for instance, if Brazen Head was on one transformer, but the next door neighbor was as well, it would be best to do both of them, whatever was on that one transformer. You could move the transformer, but that wouldn't be worth the time and energy.
My understanding was with the LED, we'd end up having more transformers than we have now, correct?
I would doubt it.
Now that you know what's going on out there.
Yeah, I mean, you've got so many transformers, I would think you'd be able to split that up properly. LED drivers are rated in wattage, and the amount of footage that you have on those runs would calculate out that wattage. So some of those would, you do the, and that's what the other thing with this, is that you'll be able to actually put that out for bid if you wanted to by using this, and say, you know, this is, we want to change this out. You know, you'd have a run that maybe is 100 watts because of the distance, and you'd have one that's 300 watts. Well, then you'd have a 100 watt driver and a 300 watt driver. So you'd have multiple sizes of drivers for those LEDs.
It's my understanding that the look would be very different, a much brighter, cool look, so you want to do that in sections that look uniform?
Yeah, you know, there's different colorations of LED lamps. You would want to go to the absolute lowest coloration of that. And I would never recommend doing anything without a sample. You know, you'd want a demo, you'd want as many people as you'd want to get involved in that to look at that. There are options for LEDs that are very bright and very blue. For instance, the screw-in lamps that were put into all the light fixtures that are down there, the post lights, I consider that a very blue type light. There are better options to get that coloration down further. I would recommend you go with that lower coloration and a demo.